sorry, but I must interrupt this show.
Later, you know what it is. Hey, ham solo. It's time, baby. Low. It's time how we do. Huh. Hey.
They said we said we hit. They said we said we on. They said we said we strong. They said we said we go. We say that you heard right. 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 They said we said we hit. They said we said we on. They said we said we strong. They said we said we go. We say that you heard right. We say that you heard right. We say that you heard right. We say that you man. I swear that it's imminent. I've been going so hard on my pimpin' shit. About to go in and buy me a whip. And I pull that shit fresh off the dealership. I can leave you on red like an Xbox. Got me laughing at you like you red fox. Got you chasing Hot Wheels like a matchbox. EA running the game and it don't stop. Super cold like I'm playing for Blizzard. Cut you all in my sights like Red Dead Redemption. Never gonna slip on my pimpin'. Better get out my way, bitch. I'm on a mission. Really ain't no competition. I'm steady grilling opposition. I'm get up and ready to win. They can play it how they play, but fuck what you say. I'm getting this money today. Last of us like a dying breed. Down the ride like a noble steed. Fatality moves, I make it bleed. That's on any game, that's on any screen. Shut up and give me your money. They said we so lit. Even if I take an L, we coming back just to show that we don't quit. They said we hit. They said we on. They said we strong. They said we go.
What's cracking, everybody? Welcome to another phenomenal episode of Behind Them Sticks with your boy Ham Solo 05 Gaming here with you on the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel. And I finally got this guest that I've been trying to get on this dang channel for like the last year, man. And can you attest to it, brother? Can you attest to it?
I can indeed attest to it. I can. we made it. We made it happen in the end, right?
Yes, we did make it happen.
That's what counts.
Yeah, and I appreciate you keeping this kind of like door open and whatnot, because there's a few times where I was like, man, I hope I ain't bugging the hell out of this dude right now. But you broke it down for me and was like, yo, man, I had to push everybody to the side a little bit, because that's just how, the gaming business, it's constantly trying to give us information and whatnot that we need. And that's your job, is to inform the people. So I had to step back, respect it, and just let me know when you could do it. Of course, I had to continue to remind you, hey, I'm waiting. And then of course, you came through for you, boy. So I appreciate it so much. Everybody, welcome to the stage here on TSWS Gaming for the first time and the only time for Behind Them Sticks, Mr. Jez Corden of Windows Central and many other things as well. I'm going to have you going ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know where they can find you. But I'm going to go ahead and put some of your stuff up so people can actually see where you're at and whatnot and what you do. But go on ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, brother.
Yeah, so I'm Jez Corden, managing editor at windowscentral.com, which is a tech blog, first and foremost. We cover the Microsoft ecosystem, which also includes Xbox as a pillar of that. So it's mostly Windows, but also Xbox, laptops, PC, chips, artificial intelligence, all the kind of Microsoft, all the stuff that Microsoft's into in one place. Been doing that now for 9 years in March, and then 10 years if you count my personal blog back when I was doing it as a hobby. It's been a long road, man. It's been a long road. But I also do a podcast with Randall Thor 19 on YouTube, which is Randall Thor 19, his YouTube channel over there. Ham Solo's pulled it up on the screen there.
Oh, of course. Gotta represent.
And we've been going for 6 years. We're coming up on episode 300, so it's pretty exciting. Pretty cool.
Absolutely. And just to throw some other stuff out there, they also Jez also has his own channel, Jez C, where you can check out some of the Xbox 2+1. They've had Mr. Matty Plays as of recently, John Linneman, super dope dude that I've actually had the opportunity to interview here. You can also check Brother Jez out on Twitter as well. Big time following with 120K followers right there. Go check him out. He posts a lot of his articles and stuff like that once they go live there. And also in the description below, I do have his link tree as well, so you can see all of the different links to his channel and some of the stuff that he did not speak of, because we on a time limit right now, so we're gonna keep it moving. But anyways, thank you so much, Jez, once again for being here. But anyways, getting back to the action, more or less. Oh Lord, my thing in the background is tripping out. But anyways, I usually always ask people, which I forgot to ask you before the show started, what your first ever console that you ever had available to you, in the living room. Like you were able just to hop in the living room and, get some gaming in. What was that very
Yeah,
first console
so
that you had?
my first console that I actually played was Atari 2600. My uncle had one. But the first console I actually had access to, like, from my living room, because I really liked the Atari 2600, that my uncle used to bring round sometimes. My parents got me a Sega Master System, so that was like my first console that I had. It was amazing. I played that thing to death, man. Alex Kidd and Miracle World built into it, and I had Sonic and a bunch of other random games that I can't even remember the names of now. It's funny enough. There's this one game that was like, maybe if I posted on Twitter, someone would be able to remember it. But there was this one game I had that I can remember the cheat codes for the game, but I can't remember what the game was called. It was
What?
like a racing game. Yeah,
How do
it
you
was
do
like,
that where you can remember the
yeah,
buttons in your head on the code, but you can't even tell me what you were playing? Like that's
yeah. It's so weird. Like it was like this vehicular combat game. It was basically a shmup on a road. Um, and like you were like a James Bond car with missiles and guns and stuff. I
oh,
remember
like
the cheat
Spy
codes, but
Hunter?
huh?
Was it like Spy Hunter
Man, maybe. Well,
or Reckless or like I'm trying to remember. But I know Spy Hunter, you had like the cars that turned into like motorcycles, like
I
or turned into
remember.
a boat when you drive into the water. But it also depends on
Um,
how long ago this
yeah,
was.
yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe it was Spy Hunter. I don't know. I'll tweet it out and try and dig it up sometime. But yeah, it's just I played that thing to death, man. But yeah, Sega Master System was my first, and I suppose I went through like a Sega ecosystem through to getting to PlayStation 1, and then eventually a PC, and then 360. I had an Xbox OG, but I didn't really play it much. I think it's because like the retail stores were pushing PlayStation so much in the UK, and I only had Halo for the original Xbox, and I barely played it. I completely missed out on games like Morrowind and Knights of the Republic. But then my PC died, and I got 360 because it was much cheaper than getting a new PC. So that's kind of how I got into console game. But yeah, Sega Master System, man, awesome system. But back then, I guess.
Oh yeah, I love everything Sega, man. Sega is my thing. I still got the OG Genesis with the 32X and Sega CD right there that I was just touching just a moment ago. But shout out to you guys in the chat as well. I see Big Mad Mo, God Emperor, Sofa King, Yodani Quazada, Matt Likes Game Sour Blow, Jeremy Brown, and yeah, definitely. I appreciate you guys for popping in. Make sure you guys hit that like button, share it out, let everybody else know we're going to be live. This show's only going to be about an hour today because I got parent teacher conferences with my daughter, and family comes before this type of stuff. So got to make sure I have my house in order. So, but anyways, getting a little bit further into it. So Sega Master System was kind of the thing that started it off for you. What was like the first highlight console that you had available to you in something where you were just like, man, this right here is a problem. This is next level.
I think the first time I was like well and truly mind blown was the PS1, man. I remember like the PlayStation 1 came with this demo disc which had like
Siphon
like
filter.
yeah, it had stuff like that in it, but it was like the very, very first PlayStation demo disc had like Crash Bandicoot and like this T-Rex thing where you could like it was just a T-Rex walking on a blank background and you could control the T-Rex and stuff. And it was just to be like, look, we can do 3D graphics. And I was just mind blown, man. I can't remember if I think I got PlayStation 1 for my birthday or for Christmas or something like that. and I just remember it just felt like I was in the space age now or something. After like I'd gone from like Sega Mega, well, we call the Sega Genesis, Sega Mega Drive in Europe. It was called the Mega Drive for some reason in Europe. And so I'd gone from the Sega Mega Drive to PlayStation 1. It was just it was like stepping into another dimension, man. I suppose it literally is, because you go from 2D to 3D. But yeah, it wasn't just the graphics though. It was the games, man. Like I'd never experienced the classic Final Fantasy games or stuff like Zelda. I'd never played an RPG before. Okay. And then when I played Final Fantasy 7 on PlayStation 1, I was just like, oh my god, games can be as compelling as movies or books, or it was the first real story-driven game that I played. Because up until then, it had just been shooter, like dumb shooters, and games without story, platformers, stuff like that. So yeah, PlayStation 1, man. I think that's when I really became solidified for me, where it's like, okay, this is my life now.
No, I totally get that, because the PlayStation 1 in our household, I remember, because I had the Sega Genesis as a kid. I was always playing Road Rash and NBA Live,
Road
and
Rash
John
is
Madden.
awesome.
Yeah, right. Road Rash 2 was my joint, because it allowed you to have like the the passwords that you could save and then hop back into where you were, continue. You get all these crazy bikes, steel chains, batons, and stuff like that. But I remember when we got the PlayStation, it was the adult console, aka Ham, you can't touch it. So I remember the first time being allowed to play the PlayStation. We actually had one of the old school original PlayStations that had the composite cables in the back of it that you had to plug in. Before they came out with that other plug that just did all. Yeah, right. So I remember being invited to the room. We had the big screen TV with like the whole hole under it where you can actually put consoles in it and stuff. Those like window doors that you can open up under the TV back then, where it was all one piece. We had that, and Ridge Racer was my first game I ever got to play on that console, and I thought I was in heaven. I thought that was like the coolest thing in the world. And yeah, it was just those 3D graphics and everything were like mind blowing, because coming off of the Genesis and then hopping on with one of those old school non-analog stick PlayStation controllers, it was mind blowing. That many buttons was crazy. And having 4 back buttons, R1, R2, L1, L2, was a little bit more than the Super Nintendo was before, because they had the top buttons. But anyways, so
you
that
have to remember though, when the PS1 first came out, it didn't have analog sticks.
Right, exactly. It was just a D-pad and the 4 buttons.
It was just a D-pad, yeah.
Select, start, and the L and R buttons. That was it. And the L and R buttons were tiny in the back.
Yeah, they were.
They were really tiny. But yeah, that was an amazing console. It had some great games on it. You named a few of them. I mean, Legacy of Kain was obviously a big one. Wipeout, Parappa the Rapper back then. I liked GTA London back then, was
GTA
my
London,
thing.
Yeah.
And GTA 2, man, those radio stations were insane. But anyways, going a little bit further, so that was obviously the big wow factor. Did you have that same effect with the PS2, Xbox when it came out? Because then it's like, yo, this computer company is coming out with the console. And then Nintendo had their own spin on trying to bring things more realistic with the GameCube. How'd you kind of feel about that generation? Oh yeah, don't forget about the Dreamcast. Can't forget about the Dreamcast.
Yeah. I mean, during the PS2 generations, when I first got a gaming PC, and I think that did take a lot of my attention away from console gaming for a while. I got a PC, and I started getting into StarCraft, and I played so much Unreal Tournament, man. Unreal Tournament 99.
Yo, Unreal Tournament was lit back then. It was so
it was amazing. Like the PS2 couldn't get a look in. Like we were just absolutely every day after school playing Unreal Tournament constantly, and then Unreal Tournament 2K3, and then 2K4. Just playing it non-stop. You know, and Unreal Tournament 3 came out, and like it was like, what is this? This sucks. So I don't know, but so I did have a PS2, but I had loads of issues with mine. Like they kept breaking on me. I think
snap.
my family went through like 4 PlayStation 2s, and I don't know if it's because like it's where I don't know if it's like where I live. Like I live on a really busy in England. I live on a really busy sort of main road where there's a lot of traffic congestion. And at the time, it was just super dusty. The air was just so dusty. PlayStations get so dusty, they just like break, you know. And stuff like that. No matter how much cleaning you did, it didn't matter. So I always I kept getting that issue with the PlayStation 2s where like you put the disc in and it wouldn't read the disc, you know. So eventually I got sort of fed up of replacing the PS2s and I just stuck with PC gaming for ages. But I did like the PS2, you know, Final Fantasy X was a game I really enjoyed playing. So I got Silent Hill 2 for Christmas one year, the most Christmassy gift ever. And I was really sick that year. I had like some really bad illness that the doctors didn't even know what it was. So like I just spent like 2 weeks playing like Silent Hill 2 repeatedly while being sick with fever, and it's like it's a fond gaming memory for me playing Silent Hill 2 on the PS2. But yeah, like I never really like Xbox was not a thing in the UK, man. I'm telling you straight up, like nobody cared about the original Xbox. Like in my perception, like at school and stuff like that. People were either PC gaming at that point or they were still on PlayStation. PlayStation just can be completely dominant. A bunch of people had an N64 or whatever, and you know, but yeah, like GameCube, Dreamcast, none of that really registered in my circle of friends. It was all PC or PS2, and I would have been about maybe 13, 14 at this point, 15, those kind of ages. But then it's sort of like you get to a certain age, and it's like your parents stop buying you such expensive gifts, I suppose, for Christmas and stuff.
Starts to become
But
clothes.
Yeah. It starts to become clothes, yeah. And then like as well, you can't afford to buy your own stuff. So it's just like, yeah, I just sort of bounced off console for a long time for PC. And then World of Warcraft came out when I was 17, and that was it, you know.
Yeah.
No more
If you read the description of his Windows Central like introduction to who Jez is, it tells you right there, like dude was on World of Warcraft like it was a job. Like for
real, yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So PC gaming became a big piece for you. I was into PC gaming a little bit. I wouldn't call myself a PC gamer back then, but I was into PC gaming. So like the Unreals. I had Max Payne the first time on PC. Came with the little mouse pad and whatnot. You remember that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Flight sim was a big deal back then. I remember trying to always fly into Mount Fuji. But yeah, PC gaming was definitely around back then, but it was hotter to be into consoles, in my opinion. It just felt like more games and more opportunity were over there. But your long term kind of games like Unreal and what was it, World of Warcraft and stuff like that. Like they definitely had a lot of RPGs and stuff like that on
I feel
PC.
I feel like console had a lot of the desirable games or the prestige games. I remember being like, I was so excited for games like Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy IX and Resident Evil 2 just because of the marketing that console would get. And then like a PC was always like these addictive games that I just play like relentlessly, like Age of Empires or StarCraft, you know. And then you know the online games like Unreal Tournament. I like when I suppose because like when you first get the internet, like none of the consoles were hooked up to the internet. Like I had a Dreamcast. I did have a Dreamcast. I had a chipped Dreamcast with like 1,000 games on it. because they were so easy to pirate things for, and everyone everyone I knew had everyone I knew had a sort of a Dreamcast with a boot disc with all the games on, and it was just kind of like, man, I feel bad for Sega, but I gotta save that money, man. You know? So yeah, I suppose, but I didn't really use it, you know. And it did have the modem built in, but it was like, am I going to hook up the PC to the internet or the Dreamcast? It's not going to be the Dreamcast. You know, it's before the days of Wi-Fi and stuff like that. You know, it's like that long ago. So yeah, it was all PC, man. But yeah, you're right. You're right about that. Console was always sort of sexier. I think it wasn't. It was. I think even back then, like PC gaming was seen as really nerdy. That's but I was cool with that. You know, we were building websites when I was a teen and coding and doing that kind of stuff. Is in that kind of nerd atmosphere, that nerd sort of circle at school, you know. So it's my jam, man. We used to install Unreal Tournament on the computers at school. We were that obsessed with it.
Yeah, Unreal Tournament, Unreal Championship, all those joints were they were nice. Quake as well.
Yeah,
that was hot.
Quake, yeah, Quake 3.
Absolutely. But continuing down, because I ain't got no patience right now. I gotta keep it moving. Now we start to hit towards the end of the original Xbox, GameCube, PS2, Dreamcast is, you know, RIP at that point. 360 starts to, you know, loom around. What is it, like 06? I want to say 05, 06. Trying to remember the specific year. I want to say 06. That it really started looming around and being big and popular. Were you on that train? What was it like in the UK for Xbox at that time? So now that it kind of solidified itself as like, we actually do give a damn and we want to try to be a gaming company, and we're not 3DO where we're one and done. We're back.
The turning point for Xbox in the UK was the Sony's price point for the PS3, man. Everyone was just like, nope, don't want Blu-ray. This thing is huge, and it costs like, I can't remember the price point exactly, but it was just like, it wasn't even a consideration. It was just like, this is way too expensive. And then Microsoft was just coming in like, hey, we've got a console that's like half the price, does the same kind of stuff. You know, you don't need to buy a hard drive with it. You can buy that later if you want. You don't need a Wi-Fi card. You can buy that later with it if you want, because the PlayStation had all this stuff built in. But Xbox was like, we'll make all that stuff modular. We'll make it all an attachment, so we can sell the base unit, the Xbox 360 arcade, much cheaper. And it worked. It worked for them. It was like the 360 arcade was basically the Xbox Series S, the same kind of play, right? The no frills console, and it launched a year earlier. So I remember, I remember buying my 360 because at the time we had a left wing government in power, and they had a really great policy for me at the time because they were paying kids to go to school. So like
word.
Yeah, they were like, for kids in disadvantaged areas, the truancy rates were so bad. Like everyone was skipping school, no one was going to school. So they were like, if you go to school, we will give you. It was about $40 a week, 30 quid a week.
God.
To go
That's
to
a
attend
ton
school.
for a kid.
That was a ton of money for a 16-year-old, right? So I was like, yeah, like all my friends got it. It was called EMA. It was amazing. It was so good. So all my friends got it. We were all washed with cash, man. We had so much money for like a 16-year-old. And we didn't know what to, we didn't like the idea of the money was you spend it on educational materials or something. We didn't spend it on educational materials.
Tell that to the college kids in America too, right?
We used to buy like RC cars and drive them around the park and just leave them there. You know, we didn't know what the hell we were doing with this money. We used to buy we used to go like bakeries and buy these huge like wedding cakes, and we'd take it to the park and we'd all just eat like a wedding cake. You know, because we had all this money, we didn't know what the hell to do with it. So everyone had
out of control.
Yeah, everyone had a 360 because everyone had money. Everyone in my friend circle had money because this EMA money they were giving to sixth formers to get them to actually attend school. And so I bought my 360 with that EMA money, and I loved it. You know, it was just like, and at the same time, roughly around then, my PC started blue screening on me all the time for some reason. I don't know why. You know, it's probably something I could diagnose now, but at the time I couldn't diagnose it. So my mentality was I just need a new PC, but I'll save up for that with the EMA. But while I'm saving up, what I'll do is I'll buy a 360. So like I was saving my EMA, and I did eventually buy a new PC with that EMA money, which I suppose did help with my educational life in a way. Because I did use that PC to create content, which sort of gave me a foundation, which I think probably led me to where I am now. So in a way, it kind of did help me in my career, I suppose. But yeah, man, the 360 was really big just because the PS3 was just so expensive. You know, we had a couple of rich kids at school who were like, they were like PS3 better and stuff. But even with the EMA money, like I think off the top of my head, I think it was like 500, 600 quid, something like that. And I was just like, that's like 500, 600 quid I could put towards a PC. You know, it just did not make any sense to me to buy a console for that much money. But and it didn't make sense for a lot of other people as well. You know. So
you obviously didn't
I think
really need
that's
a
when,
Blu-ray player, did you?
yeah, no one needed Blu-ray, no one needed Wi-Fi. Nobody had Wi-Fi back then.
And
It
remember,
was a
keep
very
in mind
future-facing
as
console.
well, who all had HD TVs back then as
Yeah,
well.
that too.
And then HDMI cables started at like $60.
Yeah, that stuff as well. Like I had a big cathode ray tube TV. You know, I don't think it even had a HD slot. I did eventually get this little flat panel 720p TV with a DVD player built into it. I
There you
remember
go.
that. That was but again, the 360 could incorporate that as well because it was all modular and stuff. But yeah, 360 really solidified its place then, and then Call of Duty. Everyone sort of, you know, everyone switched from Unreal Tournament to Call of Duty in my friend circle. Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 1 and 2, Black Ops. I suppose I'll be in my 20s at this point. But yeah, Sony bounced back really hard with PS4, you know, and that's where we are today. You know, Sony back to being dominant in the UK after a really bad generation, I suppose, of the PS3. But they even caught up in the PS3 because the nostalgia for PlayStation is really strong in the UK. Really strong.
Shout out to Sour Blow saying, "Where are my checks?" for the school thing and whatnot. So I mean, that's funny. That's funny. Shout out to those of you that just joined not that long ago. I see Logs, Sergeant Sentinel Gaming, see Money, Ray Chi. Thank you guys so much for joining as well. But yeah, let's continue on. So the 360 was definitely dominant in your eyes, and the way that the PlayStation kind of rolled themselves out by being so dang expensive really hurt them where you were living. But then let's go on to the next generation where it was like they decided to play musical chairs and they were in the opposite chair, right? Now Xbox is giving you this thing that's not modular, right? It has to come with it, even though we then later found out that you technically didn't need it. They just were forcing you to take it. And then the PS4 is now the cheaper console. Did you go back to PlayStation at that time, or were you just like, man, I've been riding with Xbox, so this is where I'm at?
Yeah, so what happened with me was as soon as Microsoft started putting out digital games, I started buying digital games. I traded in all my physical discs and started switching to digital games because I didn't have that much space in my room at home, and like a huge section of my wall was taken up by this huge sort of bookcase that was full of games and DVDs and stuff like that. And it was really in the way. And I was just kind of one day I was like, what if I sold all of this and switched to digital, you know, to save space? So I've been doing that already. So like Phil Spencer was talking about on Kind of Funny Xcast before the summer. He was saying how like everyone's digitally locked into their platforms of choice
Right.
now. That was definitely a factor for me with the Xbox One. It was like, oh well, you know, it's backwards compatible. Well, actually, no, it wasn't backwards compatible at the time. But I was still in the ecosystem, right? Backwards compatibility came later, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But I still felt locked into the ecosystem because I had all these digital licenses, and yeah, it worked out, you know, in the end because I had all the digital licenses, and now the digital licenses are backwards compatible. But yeah, I felt locked into the ecosystem. I had all my achievements, all my friends were there. My friends were still going to stick with Xbox regardless of the you know the backlash being spread online. But we were all digital as well. Like all my friends were digital, and the idea of a digital console and sharing a library with 10 people, that was really exciting to me. As someone who, you know, there was a lot of people that I would have liked to have shared a digital library with, and also I'd already been embedded in the Steam ecosystem, so having these digital licenses and DRM, Steam DRM or whatever, all that stuff was familiar to me.
Right.
And while like you know the mainstream media was having this massive uproar and this backlash to what Xbox was trying to do, you know, I was just kind of like I was just okay with it. So it was again, it was never a consideration for me to go to PS4. Honestly, especially when like they revealed games like Killer Instinct, which was a big nostalgia play from my childhood, and I never really had the same nostalgia for a lot of Sony stuff. A lot of the games that I loved on PlayStation did end up being multi-platform anyway. Um, like your Final Fantasies, they generally come out on PC. Metal Gear Solid, I suppose, ended up being multi-platform, and then Konami imploded it. Capcom games are usually multi-platform, so the sort of PlayStation exclusive things were never a big deal to me in the same way. Because I hadn't been in the 360, the PS3 gen. I never owned a PlayStation 3. It's one of the only major consoles I never personally owned.
I was
My brother
worried
owned
because
it.
I didn't ask you if you ever owned a PS3, and you just came out and said it. So there you go.
Yeah, I never owned a PS3. Like, I just, it was just always too expensive, and or I had enough to play on 360 or PC, you know. And I was heavily into World of Warcraft at the time, so um, it was always a companion console for me. The Xbox was going to be sort of secondary to what I was doing in World of Warcraft at the time. And there were periods where I'd quit World of Warcraft for like any length of time. Like the Warlords of Draenor expansion was so bad that I didn't play for like 2 or 3 years or something.
Dang.
And also there were times where my PC was broken and I couldn't afford a replacement graphics card or something. So like I just, you know, I'd only have integrated graphics which wasn't good enough for raiding, so I'd not play during those periods as well. But yeah, man, gaming has always been a ever present thing in my life, and you know, my siblings and my friend circle and stuff like that. You know, always playing games, always playing something.
Gotcha. So I gotta ask, because we kind of skipped over a little bit of it, but where were you at with this whole Nintendo thing? I haven't heard you mention that not one time so far yet. Like, have
So
you ever loved Nintendo or owned a Nintendo product? Like, come on, man, stop shaking your head like that, bro. Like, you like, stop, man, stop asking me this bullshit.
nah,
no.
nah. I did. I had a Super Nintendo. The issue with Nintendo for me, like when I was a really young kid, um, my family like had really bad financial problems, and like in my youth up to when I was about a teenager. When I was a teenager, it got a bit better. My parents got like better jobs and stuff, got some really good jobs, but there was like a long period of time where like we really didn't have any money. Nintendo games were always so expensive. They were always so expensive in the UK. Like I remember Majora's Mask was like when it launched, and I think part of this was stock levels, but like it was when I saw it in the store, it was like $100, you know, and it was just like
64 games
what?
more expensive because of those cartridges, bro.
Yeah. My mom was just like, "You're not having this. It's $100 for a video game, you know." Or well, it was like 80 quid or something. But like by comparison, PlayStation 1 discs, they were really cheap. And also Blockbuster had them for rental. We used to just rent PlayStation 1 games a lot from Blockbuster. So we did have an N64, but we barely had any games for it. For me, Nintendo was always a Pokemon, man. Like I had a Game Boy. I had every Game Boy. Me and my friends and all this kind of stuff in my friends group. We were all really into Pokemon as kids, Pokemon cards and all this kind of stuff. But none of the rest, and for whatever reason, none of the rest of Nintendo. It was like Nintendo. The whole point of Nintendo for us was Pokemon, and so N64 Pokemon Stadium, of course, had Pokemon Stadium. I had a Pikachu N64 with the light up cheeks when you turn it on. I don't know if you've ever seen the Pikachu N64.
Yeah. Wasn't it blue, man, and with Pikachu on it and stuff like that?
Yeah. It was ridiculous, man. But I'd always had Game Boys, but only had Pokemon for them because the games were so expensive. And getting them secondhand wasn't always accessible. So, yeah, Nintendo, I don't have the same nostalgia for Nintendo that a lot of people do. There's some games that I really loved on my Nintendo, like Super Metroid. Really loved that. I had a Super Nintendo, and my brother had an N64. I didn't have it. And then I had Game Boys, specifically for Pokemon here and there. But mostly just, I just didn't have the nostalgia, man. I never had a GameCube. Never had a Wii. I just, and by that time, I felt like, I don't know, I just wasn't interested in what they were offering, kind of. Well, that's just me, it's not that I think Nintendo's bad or anything.
You're not looking forward to whatever Nintendo does that's new coming out?
Not really. I mean, I did put like the last Nintendo game that I played extensively, I suppose, was Pokemon Sword and Shield. I put like 250 hours into Pokemon Shield.
Ooh.
I did a bunch of EV training and doing the PvP and stuff and doing ladders and that. But like I was still, the whole time I was playing it, I was thinking like I'm purely driven by nostalgia here because the game itself is just not good. The quality of the visuals, the animations and the features and everything about it was just sort of so subpar that I feel like PlayStation, and if it wasn't for the nostalgia and if it wasn't for the Pokemon brand, Xbox and PlayStation wouldn't get away with putting a video game out with that kind of quality. It just sort of, Pokemon Shield really sort of, it snapped me out of it, like I'm not here for this kind of quality anymore, and that's not to begrudge anyone that is willing to put up with it, but I think Game Freak really needs to check themselves and have a rethink about its quality levels and sort of bringing those older fans along for the ride, because I think they're still putting out games that they think, oh well, little kids won't mind this crappy quality, right? Or little kids won't mind this brain dead difficulty levels. I really think they need to come out with better visuals, actually make the game offer difficulty levels, for God's sake. Make the campaign last. Make the campaign require more than one brain cell. And maybe I'll be able to get excited for it again. But I think I've just gone past it, man. Gone past it, dude. But I always keep an eye on what they're doing as a professional curiosity, but Nintendo's just not my jam. It never has been, really.
No doubt. Whatchamacallit, Sour Blow says Pokemon should reinvent themselves and drop that turn base, in my opinion. What do you feel about something like that as a Pokemon fan?
I disagree with that. I really think the turn based is fundamental. Like when you actually do Pokemon PvP, the turn-based combat really shines. Some of the plays you can pull off, can feel so satisfying. It's just that never comes through in the campaign because the campaign is just so easy. All you do is like you line up your stab types with the enemy weaknesses and stuff, and you just blast through the campaign, really easily. when you do like the PvP in the end game, that's when it really shines. But Game Freak just they don't know how to bring that to the fore, like beyond the hardcore Pokemon player, you know. Watch Pokemon esports, man. It's it gets pretty crazy when like
it gets hot.
You get someone with an off meta build like coming in with a combo that you just would never have thought of. It's like, oh my god, I would never have thought of that, you know. But
How
yeah,
about this?
I really did enjoy it.
How about this? So SSMUFC says, do you think Pokemon is falling into the quantity over quality trap?
Probably. I do. Yeah, maybe.
It's popular right now.
We're seeing Call of Duty fall into that trap right now, right?
Facts.
And Activision's historically amazing at this. They killed Guitar Hero doing this. They killed Skylanders doing this, where it was just like, let's get as much stuff out there as possible. And for years, Call of Duty was immune to it. But you started seeing the sort of the chinks in the armor when they released Call of what was it called now? Was it Ghost? Call of Duty Ghost? I can't remember what it was called.
On the launch of the Xbox One? That was Ghost.
Yeah, was it Call of Duty Ghost?
It was Ghost.
Like, yeah, you start seeing these chinks in the armor where I couldn't even remember the name of that game, you know. And then like
because Advanced Warfare was after that.
Yeah. And you start to see the quality sort of go downhill. And then they were like, they hit the nostalgia button and they were like, oh, let's remake Modern Warfare. They'll like us again. And it worked for a little bit. But now like they've shit the bed with Modern Warfare 3. So I do think Pokemon has a quantity over quality issue, and I suppose it depends whether Game Freak feels the same way, you know. Evidently they don't need to, because the game still sells like 20 million copies every year in, year out. So until it affects sales, I suppose it won't matter, you know, at the end of the day.
No, they won't care. The investors and all those people like that control that stuff, that can say, yeah, more quality, yeah, nah, we're fine. They're looking at that like, it worked. Like, let's do it again. You know what I mean? Like, screw it. Might as well just like if they're gonna keep giving us this cash like this, and they're telling me that there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Sure, they'll complain about it, but they still gave me their money. So we'll see you next time. Right. All right. So so we dove pretty deep into that, and we got I'd say about 30 minutes left of the show. So with that, I want to definitely get into the meat and potatoes that is this genre, or not this genre, but this generation with Xbox. You know, Switch, you can see is clearly still doing great, although there's talks about them coming out with a Switch 2 or a successor to the Switch. The PlayStation is going to be coming out with their Slim, so they've been kind of cutting back a little bit because they're coming out with a new model. So you're starting to see Xbox beat them in traditional spots that they don't, usually with Japan being one of the biggest like eye openers, where Xbox is really trying to move, and just any type of win is a big win for Xbox when it comes to Japan. So they're definitely running with that. But I want to hear kind of what you thought from the beginning of this generation up to now. And you don't have to go super duper deep into each one of them, but just kind of sum it up with how it was versus how it is.
Sorry, can you repeat the last bit of that question?
Yeah, no problem. So I just wanted you to kind of describe how you feel about these three consoles, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, from the beginning of this. You can kind of exclude a little bit of Nintendo because they were out for a few years before, but more or less PlayStation and Xbox from when they launched back in 2020 up to now, where we're at, where we're like starting to see Xbox, you know, the coals are in the fire, and that train is moving.
Well, it's the business is so different to the way it used to be, and I think a lot of journalists still have this mentality of, I wish everything was like it was when I was younger, and everything was just console sales, and the live service games didn't matter, and all this kind of stuff. But like, the business is evolved now, and the business is very different now. So like, even though Xbox has, PlayStation has at least a 3-to-1 sales advantage over Xbox this gen, but that console install base sales advantage is not reflected in the financials to the same degree, you know. So like, even though Xbox has less consoles, it still has a very profitable business model because they have expanded horizontally. They've gone to PC, they've got a lot of service games, and also like Ubisoft has previously made comments about how Xbox's payment flow leads to disproportionate profitability per player on Xbox because of how like the Microsoft Store surfaces content algorithmically better or something like that. You know, we complain about the ads on the dashboard, but devs like them because people do click on them. You know, so while like I think what we're seeing is a real divergence of strategies in some ways, because I think there is this realization that the console market's not growing. There seems to be a really fixed amount of people who can justify buying a console, you know, and whether that's for economic reasons, whether it's for cultural reasons. Maybe we in the West, like you guys watching this at home, and me and you, we're just sort of like, we're the perfect kind of customer for this ecosystem. Whereas like other countries, and we're talking billions of people here, they're more inclined towards free games, they're more inclined towards games with gacha mechanics, they're more inclined towards games with microtransactions, games that can play on their phone or on an iPad or something like that. And someone higher up at Xbox said something quite eye-opening to me, and that was like, they were saying like the iPad has killed the console for Gen Alpha, you know, and they have to look to like these younger generations who are coming in, because they're like they're the next spenders, right? And you're seeing Gen Z now, they're sort of reaching their 20s, and they're going to university and stuff like that. They're reaching the age where they will have purchasing power. A lot of these Gen Z type people, they grew up on iPads as well, and they're playing Roblox, and to them the idea of,
it's all about,
you know,
convenience,
buying,
man.
yeah, it's about convenience, but also access. Like to them, like a AAA game is Genshin Impact. A AAA game is Among Us. You know, something they can play for free with their friends with minimal effort involved, and you don't have to get into the ecosystem. You don't have to get into the community. You don't have to learn anything. You don't have to learn what's good and what's not. You know,
Right.
there are laws, but like they're again at the same time, millennials and Gen Xers who are console gamers, they tend to pass that tradition on to their kids, you know. So there are like Gen Z kids and Gen Alpha kids who've been indoctrinated by their console gaming parents, right, to become core gamers, and that'll happen too. So um Microsoft's diversifying by going, they're looking at mobile, they're looking at services, they're looking at, you know, Warcraft Rumble is number one on the gaming store for Apple and Google right now. It's a Clash Royale clone, but it's very, very good, you know, as mobile games go. I think it'll do really well for them. They've got Elder Scrolls Castles coming out, which is basically Fallout Shelter with castles. That'll do really well for them as well, you know. And then God knows what other mobile games Activision's got in the pipeline. Call of Duty Mobile is still huge. Minecraft on mobile is huge, and all these games are huge. So, but like you're seeing the other platforms sort of diversify in different ways as well. Like Nintendo just announced the Zelda movie, you know, live action, big budget Zelda movie.
Sony too
And
is got their hands on it. That's wild.
yeah, so you know, they sort of, I think Sony and Nintendo see traditional mediums like movies and TV shows as a way to potentially grow the console install base, and I think that's a very smart strategy. You know,
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
I think you will see people who get into Nintendo or PlayStation via movies like Mario or TV shows like The Last of Us, whereas Microsoft identified the potential of that back when they launched the Xbox One. But they, like a lot of things with Microsoft, they identify it early, they underinvest, and then they squander the advantage, right? And this is like a Microsoft tradition where they innovate and then they don't invest enough, and then someone else comes in and does it better.
Yeah, it's like they didn't believe in themselves, and they just kind of
didn't believe in
like,
themselves enough. So, yeah, exactly. And
I do
so
have a
like the
couple
Halo
questions
TV
for you.
show. Sorry, go on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your point, but I have 2 questions for you right after.
But I'd just like to wrap up the point. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the sort of, with regards to your question about where the 3 main players are going, it's diversifying their business models. Nintendo and Sony are doubling down on traditional mediums, whereas Xbox is heading out to mobile. A PC, and services and platform stuff. And I think each company in their own right will find success. And I think that's good, and I think that's healthy for overall gaming. And I think I think no matter where you play, I think each company has the ability to delight their fans and stuff. So I'm excited that Nintendo's they'll have a more powerful console. I think that's really letting them down. They don't get a lot of the AAA games, like Call of Duty, because their console isn't powerful enough. So that'll help Nintendo. And I think Sony potentially can get more mainstream normies into console gaming through their high quality shows like The Last of Us. And also PlayStation wants to work on service games too, right?
Right.
Which I think will help them offset the risk of relying on Call of Duty and Fortnite, because if Fortnite has a bad quarter, PlayStation has a bad quarter. That's not good. That your whole business model relies on an outside company, and also now Microsoft owns Call of Duty, so PlayStation shouldn't be relying on one of their competitors for income. So it's good that they're making their own service games. And by similar way, Microsoft was also relying on Call of Duty for income, and now they own Call of Duty, so they're going to be fighting. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how it's going, and I suppose I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued about what Microsoft will do hardware-wise next gen. But we'll see.
No doubt. I'm sorry if I feel pushy at all. I
know we pressed time.
This parent teacher conference looming over my dang head right now, bro. But I got a couple questions here. One of them, let's see, Mr. Joanna Dark right here says, TSWS Gaming, I have a question for Jez. Or actually, the guy paid. Let me go with the paid one first. That makes more sense. Jay Rambert says, hey, Jez, do you think there's a chance Xbox getting the marketing rights for GTA 6? Go ahead and answer that one first.
I think there is a chance. There is a chance. I mean, Microsoft's just spent a lot of money on Activision shares. So, right.
Crazy.
But I also heard that Microsoft's got a boosted marketing budget for Xbox right now, and we've seen that reflected in new billboards and signage, and that kind of traditional marketing stuff that Xbox really underbaked the last few years, I would say. So I think there's a chance, but I certainly haven't heard anything. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. There's been announced in December, right? So I suppose we'll find out then for sure.
All right, and then back to Mr. Joanna Dark's question. I apologize, Mr. Joanna Dark. He's like, damn, that was cold. But anyways, he says, TSWS Gaming, I have a question for Jez. Does Nintendo need to outsource Pokemon or a more capable studio similar to Smash?
Man, that's a tough question, man. Like, I want to believe that Game Freak surely has enough money to sort of fix their own dev culture, maybe. But I mean, it's an interesting discussion. I'm honestly not that familiar with the developer situation at Game Freak, and there'll be like Pokemon YouTubers and stuff who maybe have a lot more insight into why the games have this sort of quality delta. Like, because Nintendo puts out such high quality games when you look at like Zelda, which really make great use of the hardware available to them. But then you have like Pokemon, which is just like really sub-optimized, using inconsistent assets and stuff like that. And I feel like if the whole point of your game is the Pokemon, why aren't you making more of an effort to make them look and feel better? Because right now they just look like they've been pulled off some asset flip store. Like I honestly feel like AI could probably do a better job of generating Pokemon art assets than Game Freak right now. And maybe that's what they'll do, man. Maybe they'll just go to AI and just be like, hey, ChatGPT, generate me a Pikachu or something. Well, Pikachu always has the highest fidelity graphics, right? Because he's the mascot. So let's take another Pokemon. Like, yeah, but generate me a Parasect. Parasect ain't getting no love. No one cares about Parasect except me. So like, Parasect's one of my favorite Pokemon. He gets no love from Game Freak whatsoever. Maybe with AI, they'll be like, okay, so Parasect, ChatGPT says Parasect needs some new abilities, maybe a third evolution, or to make him viable in the meta, and give him some new abilities and a new passive, maybe, and also give him some new art assets with AI. I think that's how it could go. I really do think they'll use AI. So I think Nintendo's Game Freak especially will probably benefit from AI. But that's another big debate that I just maybe shouldn't get into too much right now because devs really don't like talking about it.
No doubt. And then the last question from Sour Blow says, what should the future of Warcraft be? For me, after the 3 expansion after the third expansion, they announced something should happen that reboots WoW, and they can upgrade the visuals like Fortnite did with Unreal Engine 5. So I have that question for you, Jez, and then the last one to just kind of tie up this topic before I hit the last one before we get up out of here is with that being said, are you going to be jumping back into World of Warcraft if it comes out to console?
I mean, I'm playing WoW right now. Like the new, I usually play. I
don't care.
I usually play. Not right now, not literally right now, but I mean, I'm back. I'm subscribed again. Like they just released a new season with a huge new continent, new stuff to do, and a new raid. So I'm back playing it again, but. There has been some speculation that the reason they announced the story arc with 3 expansions rather than just 1 expansion. Usually they just announce an expansion, but this time, like, they got the co-founder of Blizzard back, Chris Metzen, the co-creator of Warcraft, and he's back on the scene, back as lead creative director, which is incredible. That was a heart-stopping moment for me, man. Like that, people get emotional about Nintendo and Zelda and stuff. That seeing Chris Metzen on stage at BlizzCon, that was a Jez moment. Some people have speculated that this story arc is the reason they're doing it like this is because after the 3rd announced expansion, they will release World of Warcraft 2. They've kind of downplayed that theory in an interview, I think. Some people were like, are you doing it this way because you do want to release a WoW 2? But I think like World of Warcraft has upgraded its graphics similar to Fortnite over the years. Like if you go on my Twitter, I actually posted some pictures of the new area and it looks stunning, man. Like they've got ray tracing in the game now. They've got physics-based water in the game now. If you've got like the graphics card for it, it produces pretty stunning visuals. The issue with World of Warcraft is the engine was designed in an era before multi-core processing. So like it doesn't matter how powerful your processor is. You need like a single core processing to get the best out of WoW. Like even if you could have the most powerful multi-core processor in the world, and it's like, well, Warcraft don't care because it can't see them other cores, right? So I do think it does need a new engine. Whether or not they'll do it remains to be seen, I guess. I would like to see it, and I think that would also be a good time to release the game on console. But it's tough with MMOs, man, because people will stick around. That's why they released WoW Classic. There were people who refused to upgrade, so they pirated World of Warcraft vanilla servers and hacked it so that it would run. Blizzard was just like, fine, we'll give you WoW Classic. We see this with Final Fantasy 14 as well. There are people who still play Final Fantasy 11, which is another Final Fantasy MMO, because they refuse to leave the game. You invest in these characters. I have invested in my Warlock in World of Warcraft for like 17 years. It'd be hard. It's hard for me to abandon that, So
for us console, only kind of people. It's like what you're seeing kind of with Halo and Halo Master Chief Collection versus Infinite. It's like
yeah,
you're
nostalgia's a
like
hell of a
everybody
drug.
gets to Infinite and they're like, no, this is better. Like I'm not going anywhere. So
Brent in Halo, this is insanity. But like, so you get the same if you did World of Warcraft 2, right? If you did World of Warcraft 2 and they changed some things, like I don't know, say they removed the global cooldown style combat or whatever and did something else, so people would be like, I don't like the way this feels. I'm just going to play World of Warcraft. So I think like even if they did WoW 2, I think they'd probably keep World of Warcraft going as well. At the same time, and maybe do like seasons or something instead of full expansions. I don't know, but we'll see, man. I think like Warcraft as a franchise has a huge amount of potential for spin-offs as well, like action games like God of War or something. And I think with Microsoft involved rather than Activision, hopefully we'll see some of that happen. But yeah, I think World of Warcraft has an exciting future ahead of it. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Now, if you could for me real quick, going ahead, or not real quick, but like we have about like 7-8 minutes left. Going ahead and please tell me how you even got into writing. And like, I mean, look at you now. You're with Randall Thor every week doing your thing over there with the Xbox 2. You're really doing your thing for Windows Central and been doing that, as you said, for about 9 years, right?
Yeah.
So you've been pretty hot with this whole movement towards gaming, and you really made it part of your life. Can you tell me how it all kicked off?
This is honestly a weirdly long story, so I'll give you the abridged version. But what basically happened was I was an IT technician working for a charity group that runs a bunch of private schools and social enterprise businesses, and they were using an outside agency to make their websites, and they cost quite a lot of money. And as a charity group, we didn't have a lot of money, so I was just like, I used to make websites because I used to make websites as a teen. Um, I was content creating as soon as I got the internet. I was content creating for some reason. I just always had that mentality. Um, and because I used to make little comics when I was a little kid, and then I sort of translated that to web comics and then cartoons, and then my cartoon website had a blog system in it that I coded.
My
So
goodness.
like there was always I'd always been blogging here and there about random stuff, and and to but I had to like retrain myself because my web design skills were very old school, Web 1.0, and now like everything was cascading style sheets, which didn't exist in the same form when I was a kid. So so I had to learn all that stuff and jQuery and stuff, and to do that, I had to build a practice website. So I built a blog about gaming and Xbox, and the Windows Phone as well, because it was all sort of becoming this one ecosystem at the time. Like Windows 8 had just launched, and a lot of people were mad about it, and but I was like, I really like this. I like the fact that I can get Xbox achievements on my phone. I like the fact that this all ties in together, and I like the way this is going. So I just sort of made a blog and I started writing about it. And Microsoft really took notice, and I suppose it's thanks to Microsoft in a way because I was one of the only people who was writing anything nice about Windows 8 and Windows Phone. And Microsoft really noticed that, and they were like, "Oh my god, look, the marketing team must be salivating." They were like, "There's this one guy who likes what we're doing. Let's signal boost him." So like Microsoft paid for me to go and see the new Lumia 640 coming out, and I had like 500 followers at the time. This is how desperate they were for someone to say something nice about Windows Phone, I guess. And they flew me out, man. I had like 500 followers, and I got really lucky. And from that, from being in Barcelona for the Lumia 640 launch, Daniel Rubino at Windows Central offered me a job, and that's it. The rest is history, man. And then since then, just writing articles, ended up meeting loads of Microsoft people. And then from that, you get sources, and then get exclusive information, which gets you more followers, and then it becomes this cycle, right? But yeah, that's how it all went down, really. I mean, there's a huge, obviously that's the much simplified version, but always into content creation, and And yeah, I've been really lucky. Is the truth of it. Really lucky.
All right. Well, I hear that, but my last question that kind of goes with that as well, since you're half of the Xbox Two podcast, I gotta know, like, how did you meet Rand, and what made you guys actually come together to be like, you know what, we should make content. This is hilarious. This is awesome. I'm gonna talk about wild food that nobody wants to eat all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like I was because Windows Central had the Windows Central podcast where they talked about Windows and Surface and stuff like that, and Windows Phone at the time. God rest its soul. And I had like because they were doing the Windows podcast, I had this idea of like we'll do an Xbox podcast on Windows Central as well. Because at the time we were struggling to get the Windows Central audience who were very passionate about Windows Phone and pretty much not much else. They were offended we were covering Xbox and Windows Central. You know, they were like, "Oh, we don't want this. We want Windows Phone stuff." And we're like, "Look, Windows Phone's dying. We need to move on. We need to diversify the site. Deal with it." So like, I thought like with me and a colleague at Windows Central, we made a podcast called the OneCast, Xbox OneCast, right? To talk about Xbox. But we had like these conflicting schedules, and sometimes we didn't podcast for like a month because like, we couldn't get a hold of each other and stuff like that, and it was really hard. But like, I, I noticed that I met Rand on Twitter, and then we'd met briefly at E3 one year because Rand did the 1 million gamer score thing at E3, right?
Right.
So I'd met Rand at E3, and we just sometimes like have these random Skype calls, and we just talk about games and stuff, and like debate back and forth and argue about what Xbox is doing, and then it just clicked. Like I can't remember if it was me or if it was Rand, but one of us was like, you know, this could be a podcast. You know, this the way we, you know, we're talking, we're laughing on Skype and stuff, and we just decided to give it a go, and we broadcasted it on his channel 6 years ago, and 300 episodes later, we're still doing it. You know, it's just completely on a whim. I think like Rand had a podcast called TXR, I think at the time, which is still going now, with a different lineup. But I think Rand the TXR podcast that Rand was on, I think that had wrapped up. Something had gone wrong or something, if I remember correctly. I can't remember exactly what had happened, but I think Rand was like looking for a new podcast to do as well at the time, if I remember correctly. I mean, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but Rand had been podcasting before. Rand had way more experience than me podcasting. He'd been on a bunch of podcasts before. I'd guested on some podcasts and enjoyed it, and it just lined up, man. Again, just lucky, man, I suppose. And then me and Rand have pretty good chemistry, I think. So,
Phenomenal. But man, I hate to have to cut this short to you, Jez, and everybody watching and whatnot. But this has been a fantastic episode. I have like 3 kind of burning questions that I want to ask you on the way out that are pretty much quick hitter questions that we can kind of hit and then get up out of here. But I want you to tell me real quick, what's a type of game or genre in games that you absolutely won't play? Like, just forget about it. Like, if I text you, Jez, and say, let's hop on this, and you're just like, I'm about to unfriend
you. Sports, man. I hate sports games, man. They're just like like I remember being a kid, and I go to like sometimes we go to house parties, and everyone would be like huddling around the TV playing FIFA, and I just be like, oh, come on, kill me. No, it's Pro Evolution Soccer, man. Everyone loves Pro Evo when I was a kid, not FIFA. But then like Pro Evo shit the bed. But yeah, sports games, man, I hate them. Sports games.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And then the second question is if you were to pick 2 games that are dead IPs right now and bring them back to life, what are those 2 dead IPs?
Well, the first thing that came to mind was StarCraft, and I did drunkenly tweet that StarCraft was coming back this summer, and Mikey Barra confirmed it in an interview to Bloomberg this past week. So I suppose StarCraft doesn't count. So I'm going to say Heroes of the Storm, which is a Blizzard franchise, it's a MOBA. I think that game could be big if they put Master Chief and Doom Guy in it and take it beyond Blizzard games. I think that could be big. Bring it back, put it on Xbox. I think that could be really big. The other one is Dino Crisis, man. I got to give a shout out to Joe Muncher here, who's been, you know, riding the Dino Crisis train since forever. But Dino Crisis, like, I love those games, or the first two anyway. Like, it was just sort of like it was like a palate cleanser after Resident Evil. Sort of, especially the second one. Dino Crisis 2 was like really fast paced and arcadey, but it had some really creepy sections. There's one section in Dino Crisis 2 where you're underwater with a diving suit and there's plesiosaurs in the dark, man. It is freaky as hell. I would love to see what modern Dino Crisis looks like on the RE engine. But that's just two off the top of my head. There's like millions of franchises I'd love to bring back.
Yeah, I know, right? There's so many, and there's so many other questions I got to ask you, but we got to get moving. So the very last thing I'm gonna have you do before I wrap this up and hit the end stream button is I'm gonna ask you, brother, to describe gaming as a whole in just 3 words.
Absolutely and totally imperative.
Oh my goodness.
Intrinsic. I don't know.
Absolutely,
tough,
totally imperative. Okay, we can run with that one if you want. We can run with that one if you want, because I thought that was a dictionary one right there. That was interesting.
Yeah, imperative, man. Don't get to use that word that often.
But you guys, thank you so much for showing up to today's show. I know it was shorter than usual, but, you know, I got family things I got to take care of and whatnot. And Jez, it's late night over there. I want to make sure he has a good rest of his night and whatnot. Hopefully this isn't the last time I get the opportunity to speak to you and have you on some type of show. Or if you guys ever want to holler at your boy and I do something that's amazing, you guys are like, come on over and let's talk about it. Go on ahead and holler at me and let me know. But it was fantastic having you on, Jez. Thank you for your time, and thank you everybody in the chat for showing up today on Behind Them Sticks with your boy Ham Solo 05 Gaming at the TSWS Gaming YouTube channel. Jez, do you have any parting words?
Keep it gaming, guys.
Oh, you took my and that's part of my catchphrase. Yeah, as you guys know, yeah, absolutely, that's hilarious. As you guys,
that's what Rand always says as well. Everyone says that as well.
You're right. It's only half of what I say, anyways. Which is thanks everybody for showing up. Y'all have a wonderful rest of the day. And as your boy Ham Solo says on here at TSWS Gaming, make sure you guys are keeping it gaming or keeping it moving. Peace out, y'all.